cultures, and values, and creating critical environments where Native individuals and communities are welcomed and valued, and collaborating with Indigenous nations in this region to protect Native sovereignty, governance, and jurisdiction over their territories. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Professor Neil Lester here at Arizona State University, and we are excited about this conversation tonight, this morning, this afternoon, this conversation now, because it actually launches our fall 10th year anniversary activities. So yes, this is actually our anniversary, and some people will think that 10 is very young. We think given all the things that have happened in the last 10 years, the fact that we're still standing is a reason to celebrate. So we are delighted to have as our first signature keynote an esteemed person in the field who will sort of guide us through a conversation about transgender athletes and sport. I do want to announce, though, just because of the very nature of this conversation, that for some, perhaps many, is controversial, and I use that in air quotes. I want to sort of frame this conversation around Humanity 101. That's something that Project Humanities has been doing for the last 7 of the 10 years, where we talk specifically about and encourage people to live these principles: compassion, empathy, forgiveness, integrity, kindness, respect, and self-reflection. And with that in mind, I have a few ground rules, just so that we're all sort of in the same place relative to this conversation. This conversation is not a debate, but rather a perspective, a research perspective, and a lived experience. Okay, so we're not playing tug of war. We don't have the energy for that in this format. In another format, we're happy to invite Dr. Ivy back to debate, and I know that she is capable of doing that. Please practice listening to understand rather than listening to respond and to refute. Please practice open-mindedness to allow for potential consciousness raising. We welcome all questions and statements that are rooted in what we determine as genuine concern or engagement in this conversation. However, we will not tolerate attacks on anyone's race, religion, gender, ability, or sexual identity. There will also be no name calling when addressing the speaker or others in the chat. And what Project Humanities deems as inappropriate, rude, disrespectful will not be tolerated, and the originator of those will be removed immediately from the virtual space. Again, because of the potentially controversial nature of this topic for many, Project Humanities reserves the right to remove all comments that violate these terms and that disrupt the chat without providing explanation or justification. So with that said, I'd like to offer finally that this conversation is ultimately about diversity, it's about equity, it's about justice, and it's about humanity. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce officially our speaker for the next few minutes. Dr. Veronica Ivy, PhD, is an interdisciplinary scholar who has published widely on topics of knowledge, language, gender, and issues of equity, particularly in sport. She is a world-leading expert on trans and intersex athlete rights and offers institutional diversity and inclusion training workshops. She has penned articles for the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Economist, NBC News, Vice, among others, and has appeared on major TV, Fox News included, radio and podcast interviews that discuss trans issues and particularly trans and intersex athlete rights. In addition to her academic work, she's a 2-time master track cycling world champion and previous masters world record holder. As a queer trans woman, she is the first known trans woman to win a track cycling world championship. She engages in advocacy and activism for trans and intersex athletes with the message that sports is a human right. She brings to her work a unique perspective of not only being an academic, but an athlete and an activist. So thank you, Dr. Ivy, for spending some time with us. and walking through your lived experience as well as your research in what I keep using as air quotes, this controversial issue of transgender athletes and sport. And then once you finish, I will, or complete your session, then I will introduce more formally Dr. Scott Brooks, who will be facilitating the follow-up keynote conversation. So welcome, Dr. Brooks, and I'll introduce you more formally when that time comes. All right, thank you very much.
All right, well,
Dr. Ivy.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have this opportunity to talk to you. And I like that Dr. Lester keeps referring to like controversy and air quotes, because part of my goal today is to make it pretty darn simple. I'm going to make this a real simple issue, that fairness means inclusion, so that including trans, intersex girls and women in girls and women's sports is what fairness demands. So I'm going to start my slides. Can you see the full screen slide? Good. Okay. Yeah. So this is a project that is the culmination of about 5 years of work with a co-author of mine, a friend who both has a PhD in philosophy and is a practicing lawyer. So I'm going to talk to you about the science, ethics, and law of fairness and competition. So when I'm bringing the legal stuff, like that's my lawyer friend doing some of that work. And then the ethics and the science, like I do a lot of the science. Okay, so I'm just going to blow through the ASU slides that Dr. Lester covered already. Yes. And then introduce you to me. So I used to go by Rachel McKinnon. It's now Veronica Ivy. So this is back from my professional road cycling days. I co-founded a team, Foxy Moxie. It was the first international, all like maximally inclusive, trans-focused team. And we had members from literally all over the globe. We did allow cisgender people too. We weren't exclusionary. It was maximally inclusive, but we really celebrated the entire gender spectrum. So, you know, this is sort of the promo shot of me looking as tough as I possibly can. And then our mission statement was racing bikes, radically promoting trans and gender nonconforming inclusion in sport, hashtag the future is Foxy. And this is me a few years ago in Georgia winning a stage in a professional stage race. It happened to be a downhill sprint, and being a big sprinter, a downhill finish is pretty advantageous to me. So I won this. And then yes?
Yeah, Dr. Ivy, I think we're only seeing your presentation mode, and we're also just seeing the title slide. So I think you're describing something that we may not be seeing.
Oh my, I have moved on well past that point.
Okay, and Rachel, we need the captions, please.
Captions are enabled. They are enabled right now.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anyone who's having trouble seeing them, just go into your settings. And
okay, yep, okay, thank you. There we go, now we can see.
Can you see me in front of a fox?
There we go, now we can see.
Can I hold on?
Yes.
This is the first time this has ever happened to me before.
Well, we are forgiving, and we understand that technology.
Can you see me in front of a fox? And it's the full screen.
Yes, that's it. Now we can see.
Can you see the mission statement?
We see racing bikes, radically promoting trans and gender nonconforming inclusion in sport. Okay,
so that's the mission statement for Foxy Moxie, and then this is me winning that stage of a professional stage race in Georgia. So while I won this race, the very next day was the hilly mountain stage. And as a big sprinter, we don't go uphill very well because of physics. So we go downhill really good, we go uphill really bad. And the first climb was 10%, which is quite steep. And it started about a quarter mile into the race. And within about half a mile of the race, I waved goodbye to the rest of the riders and didn't see them for 4.5 hours. So by the time I finished, they were eating hot dogs and getting rehydrated, and I was covered in sweat, dying. So while people like to use me winning certain races as like evidence that it's an unfair advantage, they always very conveniently leave out all the times that I really, really lost. So even though I won this event, the very next day I was almost last. And to use a pun, I then transitioned away from road cycling to track cycling. So now I'm a track cyclist. This is in Trexlertown, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Allentown. This is getting ready for the final for an international event. Our international sports body is the UCI, the Union Cycliste Internationale. This is the event called the Kirin. It's actually a Japanese event. A motorbike speeds up for 3 laps, getting us up to pace. And then the final 3 laps is another free-for-all with 6 of us on the track. And then this is me in the white helmet here coming in 3rd at an international elite event. So this is not the masters events that I've have world championships in. Those are age group championships. This was an open elite level competition. You know, World Cup winners are in the field. So I race at that level too, and then also the masters level. And then this was the Canadian Championships in the Kirin. So this is, I'm not winning, don't worry. This is 1 lap to go. I ended up coming 4th, which is kind of a bummer. But that's me there. This is LA in 2018. This is me making the pass on the final turn with about 50 meters to go right before I won my first world championship. So we're going about 39, 40 miles an hour, pretty much hip to hip in nothing but Lycra. The banking is 45 degrees, 2-story Siberian pine wood that is very slippery. And then that was me on the podium. Definitely the proudest moment of my life. There's nothing like your first world championship. You can see that jersey, it's this one. And once you win those rainbow stripes represent the world champion, you get to wear a version of them on the sleeve and on the collar for the rest of your cycling career. So once you win a world championship, you get to always wear those. They can never take those away from me. And then, of course, I do elite racing throughout the year. This is again back in Trexlertown. This is Maddie Godby, who is the American elite champion, an Olympian, a World Cup gold medalist. The sprint event is the event I specialize in. It's a one-on-one sort of chess match. This is at the top of the Manchester track before qualifying for the sprint event. So we do a timed qualifying and you sort of build up speed and then you dive down the banking and then you're almost horizontal at 40 miles an hour here. And the G-forces can be actually pretty extreme. You have to really know what you're doing or you hit the deck. And I have eaten pavement at 40 miles an hour and yeah, it's an immediate knockout. It's not fun, do not recommend. And then you try and stay as compact as possible. We sort of affectionately refer to ourselves as gorillas on bikes because half of our training is actually powerlifting. So we are a power sport. So we do have the bigger muscles. We don't look like road riders. So if you remember that photo of me being a road rider, that is 30 pounds ago. Like that's 30 pounds of muscle difference between a road rider and a track sprinter. And then this is me making the final pass at the Manchester World Championship for my 2nd gold medal back-to-back. We did not have a 2020 championships, thanks COVID. And I am rather sure we're not going to have a 2021 championships because they're supposed to be in LA and your COVID is blowing up. So I don't think they're going to happen this year again, which sucks because that was my last year to compete in the 35 to 39 age group. So I don't get to like win one more jersey in that age group. I have to go up. And then after I won, one of my friends had a trans flag for me. So I sort of carried that around for my victory lap, which kind of pissed off the organizers. There's quite a story there if we want to get into it in question period. And then this is the photo that they would not let me take this photo on the podium. So they were letting people take photos with their national flags, but they actively threatened my friend with handing me this flag on the podium with ejection. So yeah, they were not super stoked about me being willing to make a political statement, but my very existence is a political statement. And then this is the 2nd most proudest moment of my life, you know, on the listening to the Canadian anthem again. And now I don't race for Foxy Moxie anymore. I left that team I co-founded, and then I founded my own team, Sport is a Human Right. And that is the message that I